The 2020 municipal election was very different in the town of Port Hawkesbury. Obviously, it was the first election conducted during a pandemic, and it was also the first time Port Hawkesbury residents got to use electronic voting to mark their X. And it was only the third contested mayoral race in Port Hawkesbury in the last 20 years. When the dust settled, Brenda Chisholm-Beaton was once again the mayor. She'll be there for the next 4 years, and this was a very special election for her for many reasons. So I met her at her office at Port Hawkesbury Town Hall to talk a little bit about it. Here's that interview with Mayor Chisholm-Beaton right now. From her office at the Port Hawkesbury Civic Centre, we're pleased to welcome Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton back to Telliel 24/7. First of all, thank you for joining us again, and congratulations on your latest election victory. Well, we're very happy to have you back, especially after such a busy election campaign that saw you take a big victory over your challenger this time around, Archie McLaughlin. 1,121 votes for you as compared to McLaughlin's 769. In your first election campaign for the mayor's job, you were actually acclaimed to the post back in 2016. Did you have a sense that there was a turning point in the campaign for you, or did you really not feel you had won until all the ballots had been counted on election night?
I felt that the campaign that I launched from day one was very positive, and certainly going door to door, respecting COVID restrictions, really did, indicate that there was a lot of positive reinforcement at doors. Folks were very happy with the last 4 years, answered questions, and certainly got lots of wonderful positive feedback. So I was fairly confident coming into the election process. I felt that I was able to reach, I was at every door, not everybody were home, and I did actually go around town a second time talking to folks who I didn't have an opportunity to speak with the first time. So I definitely connected with as many people as possible. Also used social media. I had signs, I created a website called voteforbrenda.ca, which I felt, looking at the traffic on that website, I was actually quite surprised that we did have a lot of local traffic, but I was surprised to notice that my website generated traffic from all across Nova Scotia and even globally, which was really interesting. And of course, radio ads and all of the campaigning, all of the strategies that I was able to employ, including making it to doors, I felt quite confident going into election night that I would have a positive response. And I'm sitting here today with you, so I really am grateful for my campaign team. I'm grateful for the citizens of the town of Port Hawkesbury, as well as the support that I was able to garner both locally and across the province and nationally as well. Lots of folks reaching out to support me from other areas in Canada.
This was a very different campaign for you, not only because of the pandemic and the social distancing restrictions that came with it, but this was also your first contested election campaign as mayor since you were acclaimed back in 2016, and the first time that you had run against other candidates since 2012 when you first ran for town council. Knowing all that, what was it like for you being out there as a mayor with a record to defend, but also having the benefit of incumbency?
COVID-19 has certainly changed the water on the beans when it comes to campaigning. So what really did change for me for this particular election in the fall of 2020 from when I was campaigning in 2012 as for a council position was certainly the way that we interact with citizens. So how that looked or manifested differently for me this fall was that a lot of the conversations were happening on doorsteps, 8 to 10 feet away. And the very small handful of times I was invited in, conversations with masks. I feel that the challenge was being able to have that personal contact and those intimate conversations perhaps were slightly different from 2012 to this fall, but it was still important that, for me personally, was that I show up at the doors and to offer that opportunity should any of the citizens want to take that opportunity to have a socially distanced conversation. I feel that COVID-19 did kind of color that experience versus what occurred in 2012. I think that having another candidate run for mayor, I think that that's great that people have a choice for who they want to represent them for the next 4 years for the town of Port Hawkesbury. Had a couple of great conversations with Archie McLaughlin, and certainly, as I mentioned, he did call me after the election results, and I really did appreciate that. And I told Archie my door is always open if you want to come in and have any kind of conversations with regard to municipal government, the town of Port Hawkesbury specifically, and I do hope that all 9 candidates that ran in this election can, although not all of them can all sit on council, because our council, we have a council of 5 and 9 that we're vying for those positions. But I hope that all 9 candidates continue to do what they can to move our town forward. And I think it's wonderful that we've had that kind of interest for municipal government, and I certainly hope that we have a successful 4-year term.
It's curious for me to look at the makeup of Port Hawkesbury Town Council right now. There was one new face elected this fall, Jason Aucoin, but you also have Blaine McQuarrie, who was elected just over 2 years ago in a special election for council. And as well, you have councillors Huey McDougall and Mark McIver, who were each first elected to Port Hawkesbury Council in 1994. Knowing all that, what do you feel about the divergent council experience and life experience of the various people you'll be working with on this council going forward, and how that might be able to shape the future of the town?
Well, I think the next 4 years of Port Hawkesbury Town Council is going to be exciting in terms of projects and initiatives going forward. I know that the 3 incumbents that were re-elected have a keen interest in continuing on with the priorities that the town has set before that are with regard to housing, with medical health care recruitment, with waterfront development. So I foresee those files going forward, again, with lots of momentum from our incumbent councillors, who really is going to be business as per usual. Jason Aucoin, who's our newest elected councillor for the town of Port Hawkesbury, he will be have that opportunity to learn the ropes and to kind of receive a bit of an orientation session with our senior staff. And we hope that once we're sworn in, that we will have a strategic planning session as well as a committee assignment session. Citizens can expect in the next couple of weeks as well to have an invitation sent on behalf of our town council. If there's any citizens interested in sitting on any of our local committees, waterfront development is one example, and certainly any interest, emergency management is another. Any interest that our citizens have in sitting on any of those committees, they can certainly apply. And I think it's important that yes, there is an election every 4 years, and yes, that our citizens do elect 5 people to represent their interests at the council table, but we also want to make sure that in those 4 years that we're providing ample opportunity for community engagement, direct community engagement with regard to the future direction of our town. So it's exciting. I would like to see our community as well engaged in our strategic planning sessions, so I will have conversations with our council with regard to how we might be able to implement that as well.
You mentioned waterfront development, and I know that there has been some citizen engagement on this and some open house discussions that have taken place over the summer. The town is really looking to move forward on this project, and I just wonder if you can give me an update on how waterfront development is going right now, and where do we go from here on this particular file?
Well, You're correct, Adam. We did have a kind of a brainstorming session in the community in August with regard to waterfront development. We have a few active files as well, and I would say in the very near future we will have a waterfront development plan for the town that we'll be able to implement over the next 4-year term, and it'll be exciting to see how that kind of develops. We don't have that plan yet, but we anticipate having that shortly.
There were a lot of eyes on this election campaign, and especially on the results, in light of an effort that you were directly involved in over the course of 2020. You were the co-chair of Government Focus, which hosted a leadership school for women in August. It was meant to happen in March, but a hybrid version of the event took place in August and attracted over 100 potential female candidates for this election and also for elections to come. And we saw some of the results happen in terms of not only an increase in female candidates in this neck of the woods, but also in the election of female candidates in several areas that hadn't had many women running. Can you give us a sense of what that meant to you to watch these results come in?
How that manifested itself over the couple of months after the leadership school was concluded, I felt did have a bearing in some of the results, and certainly in the growing interest for women in local government, and not just local government, also in First Nation and municipal local government, as well as leadership positions in communities overall, in general. It was about getting women to the table, and not just elected council tables, but getting them to all the tables in leadership positions has been kind of the mainstay of our group. So how things looked though during the election was exciting, because Inverness County now has a completely gender equitable council, 3 women, 3 men, I think is wonderful. Richmond County went from being a council with no women represented at all, and I know we had the conversation in other interviews as well, Adam, about that. And it was wonderful to see two women, wonderfully diverse, powerful women achieve positions at the Richmond County Council table. It was very exciting for CBRM as well. CBRM have their first female mayor in the history of the CBRM, Amanda McDougall. Very, very excited when I heard that election result. And Victoria County as well. Their council of 8 now has 3 women represented. Perla McLeod was the only woman on council for the last term, and she is now joined by 2 more women. And when Perla McLeod was elected in 2016, she was the first woman in 25 years at the Victoria County Council table. So we've made some wonderful strides for this municipal election, and I hope that positive momentum continues into the future. We still have 3 First Nation elections to be concluded before we have a great, or at least a better understanding of how women are represented at all of our council tables as an entire island. So we do have 5 First Nation communities. We have 5 municipalities. Right now we only have two leadership positions that are elected by the people of Cape Breton, and those positions are the 2 mayor positions in CBRM in the town of Port Hawkesbury, and we know that both of those positions are held presently by women. So it'll be exciting to see the warden positions and how they play out in the next couple of weeks. So right now for Cape Breton Island, from a municipal perspective, how the needle has moved has been we went from 16% women represented at our council tables to 30%. So that's a significant amount of movement, and hopefully we can take a lesson from Inverness County, who has a completely gender-balanced council. That's amazing.
Of course, it's one thing to say that more women will run for municipal office, and it's quite another thing to say that more women will get elected to municipal office. But it seems that in the Strait of Canso, around Cape Breton Island, and in such communities as the Halifax Regional Municipality, female candidates were successful in both many local races and even in running for mayoral races. So I'm just wondering if you have a sense as to why the people of the Strait, of Cape Breton, and of Nova Scotia in general seem to have gone for female candidates in this year's municipal elections. Why do you think it worked out so well in 2020?
So the message really was how we have a population of half women and half men in all of our communities, and we know that local government is the closest to the everyday lives of the people that we serve. And it's so important to make sure that we have women and men represented at that table. And beyond the scope of gender, it's about having the right people at the table and making sure that all of our community and all of our population is truly represented. So bringing the context of gender equity into focus over the past 12 months, I feel has, given our voting public an opportunity to consider that when they go to the polls. And again, gender is important, and it's incredibly. I'm incredibly inspired by seeing the needle moved on the island of Cape Breton, and to see that we are kind of making strides with gender equity here. I think I'm very proud of that fact.
The day after this year's municipal elections in Nova Scotia, I saw a comment on social media that read, "It's remarkable that so many female candidates were elected to public office in Nova Scotia, but it will be a wonderful day when it's not so remarkable that so many female candidates get elected to public office in Nova Scotia." Are you looking forward to that day when this type of activity and this type of support for female candidates is routine as opposed to the exception to the rule?
That's right. Yes. So I often think about that from a little bit of a different perspective, and not just from having gender parity at our elected tables. I also think about it in terms of our efforts putting on the Leadership School for Women. So wouldn't it be wonderful to get to a point where we can put on a leadership school for everybody and not have to worry about getting those diverse voices at the table, to encourage them to put their name forward and encourage them to run in elections and earn and win council seats. So absolutely, wouldn't it be wonderful when we are at a day where we don't have to worry about gender parity, where we don't have to worry about gender equity, where we don't have to take extra steps to provide the tools that we need to women and girls who may not otherwise consider an elected position for themselves, or may feel like they need extra help to be able to get from point A to point B. So wouldn't it be wonderful if we didn't have to worry about those things, and that it was the gender parity was just completely commonplace and a normal thing.
Mayor Chisholm Beaton, amidst all the bright lights and good news for female candidates, and for a lot of the successful female candidates as well, there were some very dark and negative moments in this municipal campaign surrounding female candidacies, including your own. Very early on in the fall, you put a Facebook post up about what you described as the darker side of being a female municipal leader. At the same time, the woman who wound up winning the mayoralty in the Cape Breton Regional Municipality, Amanda McDougall, was facing attacks on Facebook from those suggesting that she shouldn't be running for mayor because she was pregnant. She's due to have a child in the coming month. So I put my question to you. Did it bring you and some of your fellow female candidates and those who supported you so much during this campaign some vindication on election night, when not only were the numbers very good for so many female candidates around Cape Breton and the Strait area, but in many cases they resulted in winning campaigns to some of the top jobs municipally in Cape Breton Island and around Nova Scotia?
So the decision that I made to speak out against the negative rhetoric, the misogynistic treatment that I experienced firsthand, and that I know that other elected women and women trying to be elected have faced, it's important that we have these conversations, because if we don't have these conversations, or if we don't talk about the negative things that can happen, then we won't have change. So it's important that our citizens are aware that unfortunate things like this are occurring. It's important that other women who want to pursue an elected position, it's important that they are not blindsided by this kind of behavior. And it's also important that we as citizens and that we as elected officials do what we can to allow for people to recognize it when it's occurring, and to choose not to either be swayed by it, or to understand that, okay, that type of behavior is wrong, and I will either A, decide not to let it sway me, or B, I'm going to stand up and speak out against it as well. So the more people that say no to this type of poor behavior, then the less likeliness that it will continue to occur in the future. So we do have to continue to have the difficult conversations, and it does make folks uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable speaking about it as a person who has experienced those kinds of things. I don't feel, when I took the opportunity to speak about it, I wasn't doing so from the perspective of a victim. I was doing so from the perspective of somebody who wants to see this type of poor behavior changed. And I really do feel that as we continue to have these difficult conversations, it's going to continue to enlighten citizens and embolden citizens to not accept it and to reject that kind of poor behavior. I was watching Amanda McDougall's campaign quite closely. I was appalled at the treatment, the misogynistic comments, certainly when you look at her campaign and people questioning her ability to be a mother and still do the role as mayor, is just not something that a male candidate experiences. So you really do have to step outside your comfort zone to try to understand how gender does color the political realm, and question our own maybe thought processes as well on, why there's a different set of expectations for women or for men who are seeking out a political office. At the end of the day, I think that the end result of these difficult conversations will be a much smoother path for women that will come after us, so that they will feel more comfortable having the ability to stand up for themselves and say, you know what, that behavior is unacceptable, and I do not have to be party to this type of poor behavior. And women will feel more comfortable calling out that negative behavior when it does occur. It took me some time. Like what I went through for the past 8 years as an elected representative of the town of Port Hawkesbury, like all of those experiences do kind of culminate and have an impact. But at the end of the day, it's what do we do? How our response to that kind of behavior, can we use that experience to flip the script for other women? And that's what I was hoping to do. I wanted to have those conversations so I can flip the script for other women, to say it's okay to stand up, and it's okay to say, you know what, this behavior is unacceptable. And it's also okay to extend an invitation to the citizens you represent to say, stand with me against misogyny, and stand with me against sexism and bullying. So I as a result of the election and earning the respect and earning the gift of being the mayor of the town of Port Hawkesbury for another 4 years, has just solidified for me that so many citizens have taken that invitation, and they are also saying that they stand with me, and that just makes me incredibly grateful.
In terms of such activity as the Black Lives Matter movement, in terms of Pride, which had its first major parade in Port Hawkesbury this year, and in terms of the situations involving the Mi'kmaq, not just in terms of the fishery but overall, that it's no longer acceptable to simply quietly oppose negativity against any of these folks, that we must stand as allies together. You get the sense that that might be the case as well in terms of women running for and serving in municipal politics.
I will say, Adam, I personally am witness to a changing tide here in Port Hawkesbury. I feel like more people are feeling their own personal power to be able to stand up and say, you know what, I want to be part of a community that's inclusive. I want to be part of a community that welcomes everyone to Port Hawkesbury. I want to be part of a community that, you know, is willing to have those very difficult, uncomfortable conversations about racism, about sexism, you know, about misogyny, about, you know, all of the isms that really only serve to hold our community back. And, you know, we really do have the ability, and the power really is with each and every individual that is willing to accept that invitation and stand up together to say, let's all do our own part to make Port Hawkesbury the most inclusive community that there is in Cape Breton, in Unama'ki, in you know, in Nova Scotia. And it has to start from within. So it starts with each individual person. But what I've witnessed over the past term is that there's just been, you know, a rising tide in town that it's so incredible to see. And it's an incredible gift when you see your community accepting that invitation to be inclusive and welcoming. You know, raising the pride flag and having a rally, our first Pride March here in town, having a Black Lives Matter rally as well. You know, having a wonderful ceremony with our surrounding First Nation communities to raise the Mi'kmaq flag. I mean, these are the times where we all matter and we can all do our part to lend to the inclusivity of our community. So I'm incredibly proud that Port Hawkesbury is moving in this direction, and it's completely inspiring to me.
Mayor Chisholm Beaton, this was a milestone year for voting in the town of Port Hawkesbury, not simply because there was a pandemic to contend with, but because, largely due to the pandemic, electronic voting took place in Port Hawkesbury, and voters were able to go online on their phones or their computers and cast their votes for the very first time. I had understood that there was close to 44% of Port Hawkesbury voters that had used this means of voting by the time the advance polls closed. Can you tell us how you feel that impacted the overall voter turnout here in Port Hawkesbury?
Sure. Electronic voting has certainly been a huge success here in the town of Port Hawkesbury, particularly because it was introduced and we weren't sure exactly what the uptake would be. But I think something around the 75% mark was the total voter turnout in terms of electronic voting, which was absolutely amazing. So 75% of all of the citizens who voted in the election cast a vote online, cast a vote virtually, or phoned in a vote. So that's incredible. So I would say that this will definitely continue with regard to the town of Port Hawkesbury. It was incredibly useful as well from the perspective of a candidate. I was able to see who was voting in real time. You don't see how they cast their vote, obviously, but you do. You're able to see. You're able to generate a list of all of the potential voters in town. You'll be able to see how whether or not they have already voted. So in the days leading up to the election, I knew exactly what doors I needed to knock on for the folks that hadn't yet cast a vote. So that is such important information. Also for our voters to be able to safely vote from the comfort of their own homes, particularly if there are citizens who have kind of an immune deficiency of some sort, or are elderly, or just not comfortable because of COVID-19, leaving to cast a vote at one of our in-person polling stations. So about 490 people cast a paper vote total. And it was great that we had both options available to all citizens who wanted to participate in the municipal election for the town of Port Hawkesbury this year.
It's interesting to note that the overall voter turnout in Port Hawkesbury was 73%. That's the highest in 8 years since the first time you ran for council. That year, 2012, voter turnout was 72%, and this may actually be the highest voter turnout in Port Hawkesbury in nearly 20 years. Why do you think that's the case? Do you think the pandemic sparked people to get organized and make sure their ballots were marked? Why do you think people were so eager to vote in Port Hawkesbury this year?
Our actual total voter turnout was 73%, and about 75% of that total cast an electronic vote, which is so exciting. And I would attribute the high voter turnout to the fact that our citizens are feeling super engaged with municipal government, which is amazing. And I hope that momentum continues. And having both a mayor's race and a councillor race, I think, was also a contributing factor as well. I think the last number you cited, the 72% voter turnout, would have occurred in 2012, and there was a mayor's race then as well. So at the end of the day, having an engaged community and having a high voter turnout is something to be super proud about.
We're in the home stretch for this interview now, and I know you've had the opportunity to thank people on social media for your election victory. But here at Telil 24/7, we wanted to give you that opportunity to do it in front of the camera as well. So, Mayor Brenda Chisholm Beaton, who would you like to thank for this latest election victory of yours as you begin your next 4 years as mayor?
Absolutely. My heart is still so full of gratitude, and I'm completely humbled by my campaign team and also all of my supporters here in Port Hawkesbury, who I fondly called Team Brenda, and it's just it is a humbling experience. Like I said, when you have people willing to endorse you, willing to go door to door with you, willing to share and like your materials and have your name associated with them, and for them to receive a public endorsement like that is an incredible gift for people who believe in you and who feel full-heartedly that you are the future of the town. It's really hard to articulate the kind of gratitude I feel for my campaign team and for Team Brenda. Also incredibly grateful for the support that I received from outside of our municipality as well. Team Brenda certainly wasn't qualified by having a residence in the town of Port Hawkesbury. Team Brenda was citizens living outside of the town who see quite clearly that, not only am I a mayor for the town of Port Hawkesbury, but I also consider myself an advocate and an ambassador for the Strait region and for Cape Breton and Unama'ki. So having folks from living in our region, from our surrounding communities, willing to promote and endorse me as well was an absolute incredible gift. And it just, again, hard to articulate, but my heart was so full as a result of this election. And I also thank a lot of my colleagues, my mayor, warden, and councillor colleagues from across the province who were willing to like and share and offer support, offers quiet support or public support. Very grateful as well as some supporters from across Canada who reached out and sent a friendly note or liked and shared some items on social media. It's just it's something that you would never want to take lightly, and I would never want to take any of that for granted. So I will continue to be grateful and thankful for all the support that I have now, and I hope to grow that support into the future, and no matter where my path may lead.
Well, in your words, as you prepare to unwrap the gift of being mayor of Port Hawkesbury for the next 4 years, we want to thank you for helping us here at Till 24/7. Congratulations on your latest election victory, and good luck in the next 4 years.
Thank you so much, Adam. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, and as well as with Tillil.